All right. So we have started recording. So as I was saying, there's another concept of, or another way of understanding the concept of stress, which has a more mathematical flavor to it. And this was also included in your basic engineering mechanics, but no problems were given on that. Not much discussion we had on that. I think that was lecture number 4 within the stress topic. Now, we are not going to go into that much detail. However, the approach that we are going to pick up for this lecture hour, as well as for the rest of this course, will be a very utilitarian kind of approach, meaning that we will try to study things in a way that it will be useful for us to solve the problems and to go forward, instead of taking too much of a very formal or a theoretical approach. Now, I have to admit that I actually like that formal theoretical approach personally very much, because of the kind of research work that I do. I like that mathematical theoretical kind of things. And I know for a fact that in every batch, there are some students who actually like that mathematical approach, whether they are studying fluid mechanics or they are studying solid mechanics or anything else. They always prefer things to be presented in a very, very mathematical fashion. Now, I also understand that the number of students who have this kind of a mentality is very limited. Maybe in each batch, there will be not more than 10 students who like this, 10 or 20 students at max. Now, for those students, we are certainly not going to change the official nature of the syllabus. Instead, what I will do is I will share some lecture notes, some videos, which I had prepared earlier for your senior batches. And when mechanics of solids was taught in the 3rd year, consequently, we were able to go for a slightly more mathematical approach there. That is no longer part of the syllabus. Okay, that I will share with you all for you to see at your own viewing pleasure. That is only for like your own hobby kind of interest. That is officially not part of the syllabus. What I'm going to discuss, the way of discussions that we'll pick in the lecture hour, this is the official way. Okay, and if you have any confusion regarding which way to pick, you please ask me. Okay, so regarding the concept of stress, the first and foremost thing which I want to highlight is this, that no matter what way you try to understand it in your first year and maybe even earlier during your +2, stress, the concept of stress has to do with a single point in a body. So suppose we have a body, a general 3-dimensional body like this, and we consider a particular point within it. The concept of stress, and for that matter, the concept of strain also, both these concepts, it has to do, it pertains to this single point or any other point that you may choose. Okay, it has directly nothing to do with an entire plane. It has nothing to do directly with a particular direction. Rather, it has to do with a particular point associated with a plane and associated with a direction. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, this is actually a recap for you, but I'll just try to quickly go through. Plane means, you see, if you have a point in a 3-dimensional body, then you can have infinite number of planes passing through it. For instance, we can consider a plane which is like this, which contains this point. Alternatively, I can consider a plane like this. That is also very much possible. Or I can keep on drawing different planes such that this point or the plane that I choose to draw, it passes through this point. Now, when you do that, what you can do is you can subdivide this entire body into 2 parts. Okay, like imaginary cut. Like an imaginary cut, you can subdivide this body into 2 parts, and then this point will be exposed, and you can consider various directions associated with which there will be stresses. So for instance, it can be something like this, that we cut out we separate out the left hand side of the thing, so it is like this. So this contour that I have drawn is the contour which is created by this cutting plane. I separate out the left hand part. This is the point which is present. Okay. Now let us say, for argument's sake, or just for making the things a little bit formal, that this is our x, this is our y, and this is our z. So this direction here, this is the x direction or parallel to the x direction. Now I can choose to consider the component of the force which will be expressed here. So you can understand that there will be a force here. And I'm speaking in a very, very informal, casual kind of way. There are far more sophisticated formal ways of discussing these things. But suppose you consider a force like this at this point and you take the component of this along the x direction, that component is what is referred to as the, so if you take a component of this, that is the sigma xx. Similarly, if you take the component of this along the y direction, that will be what? Can someone tell me?
Tau xy.
Tau xy.
Tau xy. Sigma xy.
Yeah, sigma xy or tau xy. So usually in our textbooks, it is referred to as tau xy. So we'll say like that. And if you take a component parallel to the z direction, so this is tau xz, right? Very good. So if you understand this much,
Sir, the blue line force is a net force act on that point.
This is the net force. So all right, so it is something like this, that formally when we define this, what we do is we take a very small area around this point. Okay, we consider the small area around this point. We take this area to be infinitesimally small. Okay, so there will be a net force acting at this point. If you consider the ratio like this, the F vector divided by the A, limit A tends to 0. Okay, so this will give you something called the traction vector. This T vector is this vector. Okay, this blue line, this is the T vector. And the component of the T vector along the x direction, that is the sigma xx. The component of the T vector along the y direction, that is tau xy. And the component of the T vector along the z direction, that is tau xz. This tau vector is not actually directly the force. It is the limiting value of the force divided by the area, where this area is the infinitesimal area surrounding this point. Okay, so I told you, like, there are very formal ways of defining it. I am not going into these kinds of details. I will share some video lectures that I had prepared for your senior batches. The more mathematically bent of mind students, they can take a look at it and satisfy themselves. Okay, for our purpose here, we don't have to go into that sort of detail. Furthermore, the students who are going to take the dual degree specialization of mechanical systems design, in your 4th year, you are going to study one subject compulsorily. That will be your depth subject as part of your dual degree specialization called applied elasticity, ME 40605. So in that also, you are going to study the proper details of all these things. But for now, let me not go into that. All right, so coming back to this thing, you understand that we have these 3 components of stresses at this particular point, but it is also very important to appreciate the fact that this definition, it relies heavily on the fact that you have chosen to take a cut plane which is perpendicular to the x direction. Okay, so all of this is hinged on the fact that this initial orange color cutting plane, that is perpendicular to the x direction. Now it is very much possible, as I had drawn earlier, to take another cutting plane which is not parallel either to x or to y or to z, rather some arbitrary direction. So if you have such a kind of cutting plane, a different kind of traction vector, so this kind of blue vector, different kind of traction vector will be exposed, different kinds of stress components will be exposed. So the point that I'm trying to make is that when you hear the word stress, you always have to understand, first of all, that this stress is associated with a single point within the 3-dimensional body in general. Furthermore, it does not make any sense to talk about stress components or components of stresses without actually specifying which plane you are talking about and which direction you are talking about. Okay, so suppose you say that, okay, I'm talking about this point and I'm talking about a plane which is perpendicular to the x direction. That is fine, but that is incomplete information. For a very specific stress component, for example, sigma xx or tau xy, you also have to specify the direction in which you are taking the component. So 3 things: the point, the plane, okay, and the direction. 3 key pieces of information are directly embedded in the definition of the stress. This is extremely, extremely important. Okay, so going forward, you will see that maybe not directly in a particular problem you will have to utilize this thing, but in all the subsequent things, if you have a clear-cut understanding of this concept, many things will be automatically be clear. So this is about stress. What about strain? So I am going like extremely, extremely fast here. This is not my usual speed, but I am recapping things. That is why I'm going like this. So you see, we had various directions and planes and all these things under consideration for stress. For strain also, we are going to focus our attention on a particular point. I'm not going to draw the 3-dimensional body again. Rather, I'll just draw the point. Point is here. All of you know the definition of strain. What is it? Can anyone tell me quickly? The definition of strain which you learned in your first year as well as in your +2.
The change in dimension
Change
of
in particular
any
dimension by original dimension.
of object by the ratio of its initial dimension.
Very good. So change in length divided by original length. Okay. So no matter how sophisticated language you use, this is basically that. Okay. Relative change in length is called strain. Now the issue is, I am telling you now in your second year, apparently in advanced things, that strain has to do with a particular point. And you also know from your earlier studies that strain has to do with length. Now this point certainly does not have any length. It's a 0-dimensional entity. Okay, so mathematically speaking, a point is a 0-dimensional entity. A length or a line segment is a 1-dimensional entity. A square or a rhombus or a circle, these are like 2-dimensional entities. So where does the question of length come for this point? There is no length here. Okay, I am drawing it like this dot, but this is like it has 0 dimensions. How does length come into the picture here? So the thing is like this, that for the formal definition of strain, what we do is we take an infinitesimal line segment starting out from this point. Okay, what I mean to say is that suppose I zoom into this point. Okay, I zoom into this point, and for the purpose of clarity and making this picture clear enough, I will draw a certain line segment, but you understand that even though this is finite in length, okay, this is finite in length for the purpose of clarity of teaching, but this is actually in the real definition, this is an infinitesimal length tending to 0. Its length tends to 0. Now, suppose the body is not undergoing any force, no forces are applied, no loading is there. This is the, I mean, you have taken an imaginary piece of chalk, gone inside the body, chosen a particular point, and along a certain direction which you choose, you have drawn an imaginary line like this. Okay, so this is like a thought experiment kind of thing. Now you apply various kinds of forces on the body. As a result of the application of the forces, the body is going to deform. Okay, whatever way the body wants to deform, let it deform. After the deformation has taken place, you will see that this infinitesimal length or this line segment will no longer be like this. Okay, in fact, it may even become a little bit curved. So it can become something like this, possibly. After deformation, it can become something like this. Who knows? It can remain straight, it can become curved, doesn't matter. Now, the way that we do is, we considered this point which was infinitesimally close to it, and we considered this point which is infinitesimally close to it. See, it has elongated a little bit. It has become curved also, this original line segment that was here in the undeformed configuration of the body. When the body has deformed, it has become like this. But that end point is still maybe at a slightly larger distance compared to what it was earlier. So maybe this distance was I don't know, maybe 0.0001 millimeter. Now it has become 0.00015 millimeter, something like that. Now, this is very small distance again. Okay, it is still infinitesimal. So what we do is we consider this kind of a line segment now. Okay, so this was the original direction in which you were interested. Its direction has changed a little bit. No matter, you consider this point, take this length, okay, take the difference and do all the things that you know. Okay, so change in length divided by original length. Now, when you say that change in length divided by original length, you can still find the value. But in order to complete your definition of the strain, you have to say that this strain that I have measured, okay, this strain, this very, very small strain that I have measured, that is pertaining to this particular direction, the original direction, okay? Now, how do we formalize this a little bit in terms of the textbooks? So suppose you consider it like this, very simple. Earlier, we had considered our very regular kind of Cartesian coordinate system. You take something like that. You choose your coordinate axis like this. Suppose this is X, this is Y, and this is Z. So what you are basically doing is, initially, at the very first step of your operation, you are choosing a direction which is parallel to the X direction. Let the body deform under various forces. You find out the relative change in length. And what you say at the end is that the strain that you have found out, is epsilon xx. Okay, what does epsilon xx mean? Epsilon xx means that you are choosing the change in length along this x direction. Now, if it is epsilon xx, surely you must be suspecting that there may be something like an epsilon xy, or as you have studied in your first year, something like gamma xy. Okay, so what is this epsilon xy or gamma xy? Does that mean that somehow there is some kind of strain which is associated with not one direction, rather two directions? And that is absolutely a correct suspicion to have, because this strain that you see here, this epsilon xx, this is what is referred to as the normal strain. This is the normal strain. As opposed to this, there is something called the shear strain. So what is this shear strain? Again, you have done various problems associated with this in your basic engineering mechanics, but I want to give you a glimpse into the geometrical interpretation of this shear strain. And that is very, very simple, but many students don't know this. Even until they go into their fourth year, they don't know this. So it is something like this. You see, we started out with a single point here for the normal strain. We will again do that. We'll take a single point. But now we have to be concerned with two different directions. So what we'll do is we'll set up our coordinate axis like this again. This is our X, this is our Y. Okay. And what we'll do next is that we'll choose a direction which is parallel to the X direction like this. We will choose a direction which is parallel to the Y direction like this. So we are considering one line segment which is parallel to the X direction, one line segment which is parallel to the Y direction. Fine. Now, see, this point is sitting inside a three-dimensional body. Till now, we have not applied any forces or torques or anything to the three-dimensional body. You apply now various kinds of forces, various kinds of torques, loadings, and let the body deform. After the body has deformed, you can expect that these line segments will no longer be like this. Rather, these line segments, first of all, this point will no longer be here. It may move to another point. Let's say it has moved to this point. And you can also imagine that this line segment, it may become like this. It can, in a very general sense, become curved, but we are considering very infinitesimal distances. So for all practical purposes, as long as this point, the end point is not too far away, it is all right, quite all right to an engineering estimation to consider this thing like a straight line segment. Even if it is curved, all that you have to be concerned with is the final end point. Okay, so you can always draw a straight line segment between the initial point and the final point. So it is like this. Similarly, if you consider this original line segment, which was parallel to the Y direction, perhaps it is no longer like this. Perhaps it has now changed its orientation to like this. The way that we define the shear strain is very simple. What we say is that if we consider two line segments which are initially perpendicular to each other, okay, remember they have to be perpendicular to each other. So if they're perpendicular to each other, the shear strain is the change in the angle of those two line segments. Okay, is the change in the angle of between those two line segments. What do I mean by that? So you draw this dashed line which is parallel to the original orientation, and you draw another dashed line which is parallel to the original orientation of this line segment. So you have this particular angle here and you have this particular angle here. The summation of this angle and this angle, so let's say this is θ1 and this is θ2. So this θ1 plus θ2, that is equal to the gamma xy. Gamma xy being the shear strain. Okay, this is the shear strain associated with the x and y directions. So if you just say shear strain, it does not make much sense. You always have to say shear strain pertaining to which directions. Just like it does not make any sense to just say normal strain along which direction. So you have to say along x-axis or the x direction or the y direction or the z direction, or maybe along some direction which is not parallel to any of the axes. It can be very much possible to have a normal strain along a particular direction which is which is not parallel to any of the coordinate directions. So here also the shear strain, it is associated with two directions. For this very simple kind of explanation example, I have taken the directions to be x and y, but it is also very much possible to have like a two arbitrary kind of things. Okay, suppose you can have things like this. To begin with, these two line segments are not parallel to x, y, or z directions. Even then you can have a shear strain associated with these two line segments. Okay, what you will say is that the change in the angle that is undergone by hello. So the change in the angle that is undergone by these two line segments, as long as you can measure these angles, the total value of that is given by the shear strain. It is extremely important to note that this final angle that is contained between these two line segments, that is not the shear strain. Okay, it is the change in the angle from the original 90 degrees. Okay, so just like we have chosen this gamma xy, you can have very much a gamma yz, a gamma xz also. So all that is fine. Now,
sir,
yes.
So here gamma xy, x refer to what and y, as we have in stress, x is the first x containing the normal direction. So here
it has nothing to do with the normal direction. Okay, so what you are doing is you are taking one line segment parallel to the x direction, that is this x, and another line segment parallel to the y direction, that is this y. Okay, this y is that other direction. That's all there is to it. Okay, it has nothing to do with any normal. Okay, and for that matter, you can immediately understand. Yes, tell me.
Sir, means we can also write this gamma yx or xy.
Absolutely, that is exactly what I was going to say. Okay, so for that matter, it doesn't make any difference. Suppose if you wrote this instead of θ1 plus θ2, you wrote this as θ2 plus θ1. Would it make any change? It certainly would not. So that is why I was going to say that gamma xy is perfectly and mathematically equal to gamma yx. Okay, so here also back, if you go to shear to this stresses, you also have a relation like this, that tau xy is equal to tau yx. But the reasoning behind this tau xy is equal to tau yx is completely different from the reason which makes gamma xy is equal to gamma yx. Okay, and this reason is actually present in your first year lectures. I urge you to go back and take a look. It's like a 3-line derivation using the moment balance of a stress element. It was shown. So take a quick look at it. This explanation is also given in the lecture that I had shared with you, that YouTube video that I told was presented to your senior batches in 2020. So on MS Teams, I believe all of you have seen that video. So if you take a look at it, that derivation, the derivation for this tau xy equal to tau yx is also given. In fact, on MS Teams, the icon that I have for my account, you see if you zoom into that, you'll see that I'm teaching something on the green board. So that is actually the part where I think I'm teaching this tau xy equal to tau yx thing, if I remember correctly. Okay, so it was originally part of your first year BM syllabus. So this is about a very brief recap of this concept of stress and strain. Now, what I want to go forward and take a relook is into the stress strain relations. Okay, so let me.
Sir, I had one query.
Yes, please.
Sir, in the previous one, that is the strain yx. Yes, sir. So this one, sir, here we will not divide theta1 plus theta2 by 90 degree, because the original angle
No,
was
no,
90.
no, 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 no. Absolutely no. No, absolutely no. It is not like that. It is simply the change in the angle. Okay, so if you want to think in terms of divisions, okay, so perhaps your mind is going to, okay, for epsilon xx I was doing something like this delta L by L. Why am I not doing something like that here? In reality, you are doing something like that, but that has to do in a sense which I will briefly tell you. Okay, so right now, please do not tempt me to go too much into that, because I really want to cover something else. So I'll very briefly tell you. Okay, so the story behind that is, and it's good that you brought it up, this theta1 that can be approximately taken equal to tan theta1, and that tan theta1 can be understood to be the division of this length divided by this length. Okay, it is something like this. If you take one length here and you take a length here, then that thing is that length by this length. Okay, so it is a ratio of lengths, because theta1 is approximately equal to uh, tan theta1. Similarly for theta2. Okay, and
Hello, sir.
yes.
Sir, for the stress part, you have written sigma xx and
Right.
and also tau xy. So why is not that tau yy?
There will be tau. No, I mean sigma yy. I think you mean sigma yy. Is it not?
Yes, sir.
So sigma yy will be absolutely be present. So what you do is you take the same point and you take, instead of this cutting plane, you take a plane which is perpendicular to the y-axis. Okay, so you take a cutting plane like this. I mean, tilt it a little bit. Okay, so this diagram is very bad. Sorry, I'll redo this. Perpendicular to the y-axis. Okay, something like that. Now, when you
Okay, sir.
expose this thing, you understand, na? So,
Yes, sir. Got it.
so it will be something like, you'll get a diagram which is like this, and this point will be still here. The same point will be here. Okay, you will get one traction vector like this. This is your traction vector, and now the unit outward normal to this will be along the y direction. Okay, so the stress component that you will have, which is parallel to this y direction, okay, this stress component, the component of the traction vector parallel to the y direction, this will be your sigma yy. Okay, and the component that you will have here on this thing, okay, so that will be like tau yx, and you will have another component like this, which will be your tau yz. Okay, similarly, you can take another plane perpendicular to the z direction. Similarly, you will find sigma zz, tau zx, and tau zy. Okay. All right. Now coming to.
So I have a doubt.
Yes, yes. Yeah, tell me.
Sir, in case of a strain, we are considering about the strain at a point and considering it as an infinitesimal length. So how do we expand that with the total length? In our formal definition, we use total change in length by total dimension.
Very good, very good, very good. So what I'm going to discuss, that there you will get a glimpse of that. Okay. So very good question. So the next topic is this stress strain relations. Okay. So I have how much time left? 23 minutes, 22 minutes. It's actually impossible to cover what I'm going to cover next in this 22 minutes, but let me just try. So see, all these discussions that we have had, it was motivated in your basic engineering mechanics through certain kinds of experiments which are actually done, okay, which are actually done in the labs, not just in the second year labs. So you have this mechanics of solids laboratory on Thursdays, right? So I think so when we were students, this was one of our first experiments, the tensile testing lab. I believe it must be still there. Okay, so you basically take a cylindrical kind of specimen, a bar basically, and then you pull at the two ends, and then you measure the various stresses and strains that are generated. So the kinds of stresses and strains that we have been defining till now, that has to directly do with that kind of measured values of the stresses and strains. So what's so special about it? The special is that since you're actually measuring it and doing the calculations, there's a certain name associated with it. It is referred to as the nominal stress or strain, nominal or engineering. And as far as the stress is concerned, you can have stress and strain, okay? Both nominal or engineering stress or nominal or engineering strain. As far as the stress is concerned, the sigma, okay? And when I write sigma, please understand that I'm considering the normal stress only. I'm not talking about the shear stress. So for the normal stress, what we say in a very experimental kind of fashion is that P is the load and A is the cross-sectional area. What is this cross-sectional area? So suppose in your experiment, you take a bar like this. So usually those bars are shaped like this. Not a very good diagram, but kind of gives you the some idea. So you pull at the two ends. You pull at the two ends like this. This is the force P, and then you mark off two points here. You mark off 2 points here, and then you observe the change in length of the distance between the two, okay, or the change in the distance between the two. So this original distance that is referred to as the gauge length, okay, the original distance here, that is referred to as the gauge length, and the stress, the normal stress that you keep on measuring, that is given by this P divided by the area. Now this terminology, nominal or engineering stress, that has directly to do with the fact which area you are considering. Okay, so for this nominal or engineering stress, this area is the original area. What do I mean by that? Well, you see, when you pull apart this bar, you can understand that because of the Poisson's ratio effect, the cross section of this cylinder, eventually it is going to become thinner. Okay, so when you keep on pulling at the two ends, the cross section of this cylindrical bar, it will become smaller and smaller. However, for the calculation of the nominal or the engineering stress, we are not bothered with that change in the cross section. We do not take the current value of the cross sectional area. Rather, we are concerned with the original value of the cross sectional area. Okay, that is what is meant by this original area. Now, because I am emphasizing this point that when we are talking about stress is usually, or mostly what you have learned till now, that is nominal or engineering stress, then surely this must give us an indication that there must be something which is not nominal or engineering stress, something else. So what is that? Well, that is referred to as the true stress. And there is also a thing like true strain. So what is true stress? So true stress, so maybe if I write this as sigma bar, this will be P divided by A. but this A was the original. So I will write A naught for original, and this A is for the current cross-sectional area. Okay, so as you keep on pulling it, at every instant of time, you will be able to measure the current value of the cross-section. If you divide the load, the current load divided by the current cross-sectional area, the value of the stress that you will obtain will be somewhat different from this nominal or engineering stress value, and this value represented by sigma bar is referred to as the true stress, or it's the true stress. So there will be something called the true strain also, or the engineering strain. So engineering strain is whatever I have told you till now. Okay, so basically for as long as you are concerned with the normal strain, this is the change in length divided by the original length. So in terms of this gauge length, if this initial length is, let's say, L naught, and the final length is, let's say, L, so it is simply as simple as just taking your calculator, doing this difference, current length divided by the original length, minus the original length divided by the original length. So this is engineering strain, engineering or normal strain. Just like your +2 syllabus, you don't even have to know anything from your basic engineering mechanics. Then what is this true strain? Well, in the true strain, we actually respect the fact that this gauge length is the original distance between the 2 points, but as the body is deforming, the current length with respect to which the changes in lengths are occurring, that itself is changing. So it is not strictly correct. Okay, it is not strictly correct to keep on considering this L naught. Rather, at each instant of time when you are making your calculation for the relative change in length, what you should be doing is something like this, that you should be considering the current length. You should be considering the current length, and then you should be calculating the infinitesimal change in length that is taking place as a result of this. Okay, but this is in a differential form, and you have to go from some original length, this original length, gauge length, to some final length up to which the experiment is being done. So what is done is that people take the integration of this. So going from the initial length to the final length. Okay, so you see, in terms of the definition, you are not violating the thing. You are actually taking the change in the length by dl, and you are taking the current length that is under consideration. So at the very first instant of time when you are making your observation, this current L is the original gauge length. There is no problem with that. But maybe when you take the next observation, maybe after 30 seconds or 1 second, as the experiment is being carried out, that gauge length is no longer the original length. Rather, the gauge length or the current length is what you actually measure at that time. And then with respect to that, what is the infinitesimal change in length that you measure? So that way, this true strain is indeed literally a better representation of the overall thing. Now, there are certain practical considerations which have to be kept in mind. So practical consideration is like this, that for very common kinds of materials like low carbon steel, aluminium, which are the very, very common kinds of structural materials. Okay, many of our day-to-day implements and utilities that we use, they are made of these kinds of materials. So for them, as long as the value of the strain is very small, as long as the deformations are not too large, and that is usually the situation which we always deal with, there is practically zero difference between the engineering strain and the engineering strain, the engineering strain and the true strain. Similarly, there is practically zero difference between the engineering stress and the true stress. However, differences exist, not in day-to-day activities, okay, not in the things which we are concerned with in our day-to-day life, rather in some special kind of situation. What is that special kind of situation? And here I will appeal especially to the manufacturing students who are present in class. The manufacturing students, certainly the mechanical students will also learn this, but this is actually pertaining to the to the core interest of the manufacturing students, you will in your third year, I think you will learn one course called casting, forming and welding. So this is one particular application, but because it is so very hardcore to mechanical engineering, I'm highlighting it. This particular aspect of forming, it is a fabrication process. You manufacture various implements and devices using forming. And when you do forming, you actually rely not on the small deformation of the materials, rather on the large deformation of the materials. And for those kinds of applications, when you have to design them, when you have to do the calculations for them, this engineering strain will give you a wrong idea. So for that, you will have to go for true strain. Okay, so this kind of a calculation is necessary. So this is the original length, current length, current area rather, current area. So this is our true stress, and this true strain thing is this one. Okay, so you can write this as epsilon bar. And what is this? So who can tell me what is the value of this?
Log
ln LF by L
Very
naught.
good. Yeah. Natural logarithm of LF divided by L naught. Okay, so this actually is like in terms of natural logarithms. Okay, so don't get worried about this. This is very standard. All right, so this is something which I really wanted to highlight. Now, rest of the things which I'm going to speak about and which I will probably not finish speaking about is something which is almost like a information kind of thing, but it's important. So I'll just quickly try to give you a glimpse of it. So you may have seen already in your first year lecture notes diagrams given in the form of this, the stress strain diagrams, very famous in all of engineering, not just in mechanical engineering. So every engineer who has, or every professional engineer, whether he is computer engineer, he or she is computer engineers, electrical engineer, he or she will definitely identify this diagram, where on the x-axis you have the normal strain, and on the y-axis you have the normal stress. Please note that these are not usually, in the usual kinds of diagrams that we draw, these are not usually the shear stresses or the shear strain. It is absolutely possible to draw those kinds of diagrams also, but remember this, the usual kinds of diagrams that you will see in the textbooks and in certain professional practices is this diagram, where you have this as the normal or the engineering strain, this as the normal or the engineering, normal or the engineering stress, this is the normal or the engineering strain. So usually this kind of thing is presented pertaining to different kinds of materials. Now, as I have already told you, a material like low carbon steel is extremely important and widespread in use. So low carbon steel. So this low carbon steel, it just so happens that it is extremely ductile. Extremely ductile means you can elongate it to great length without breaking it apart. Okay, of course, gold is far more ductile than this, but you cannot use gold for structural things, okay, for obvious reasons. So what we say is like this. We are interested in the stress strain diagram of low carbon steel. What does the diagram look like? I'm sure you have seen this, but I will try to redraw this. So initially, at the very initial parts where the deformations are very small, so here the deformations are very small. You see it is practically close to, I mean, it is almost zero here. It keeps on increasing, okay? So you keep on loading the body, the stress will increase, the strain will increase. And they will increase in a very linear kind of fashion. But at a certain point, what happens is that it suddenly increases a little bit, okay? And then it falls down. And then it increases a little bit, it goes like that, okay? It almost plateaus out. And then as you keep on increasing the loading, the deformations keep on increasing, what happens is that this thing plateaus out, so as if the stress is not increasing anymore, even though the body is increasing in length. So that continues for some time. And then suddenly what happens is that the curve begins to go like that. Okay, it is slightly curved. Okay, it begins to go like that. So, and I think I have exaggerated this diagram a little bit. So it will be something like this. Okay. So you will see that for slight changes in stress, the elongations are significant. For slight changes in stress, the elongations are significant. It's like this. Now, what happens, especially for low carbon steel, is that it will keep on increasing like this. It will keep on increasing, reach a highest value, and then it will start to decrease. It will start to decrease, and then after a certain value of the loading has occurred, this bar of low carbon steel on which you are performing your experiment, it will simply break apart. Okay, it will divide into two. This cross mark represents that rupture. Okay, that rupture or breaking. So this entire diagram, it is divided into various kinds of zones. So this first zone, it is referred to as the elastic zone. And this point, okay, about approximately this point up to which there is a linear relationship between the sigma and the epsilon, that point is referred to as the proportional limit. This entire region, okay, where such kind of linear behavior you will see, it need not necessarily be linear, but for low carbon steel it is like that. Okay, it is referred to as the elastic region. The main characteristic feature of this elastic region is this, that if you remove the external loading, as long as you are within the elastic region, no matter how the body has deformed, it will spring back to its original undeformed configuration. Okay, even if for a certain material, let's say we are not talking anymore about low carbon steel, but this elastic region is a region which is present in every material, in large measure or small measure, but to a certain extent this elastic region is present for all materials. So as long as you are sitting within the elastic region and you are loading the body, if you remove the load on the body, what happens is that the body springs back to the original undeformed configuration with no residual or remaining strain. But beyond this elastic region, okay, beyond this, so actually this elastic region is up to here, I should say. Okay, this is the elastic region, a little bit beyond the proportional limit. Okay, so the proportional limit is very much within the elastic region. Okay, so please do not have any misunderstanding. So beyond this elastic region, what happens is that the plastic region starts. For low carbon steel, you have certain very special points, like this is the upper yield point, this is the lower yield point, this is referred to as the plateau region. All these things you will study when you are studying your mechanics of solids laboratory. I will not go into too much detail about this, but these are important things for low carbon steel. You should all know this. And these are all present in your first year lectures actually. So it plateaus out like this, but then after a certain value of the strain, it starts to increase. And when it starts to increase, that particular region, so let me just write this. This particular region is the plateau region. And this particular region up to the highest point, that particular, sorry, from here to here, okay, up to here, this is the strain hardening region. Strain hardening region. You don't have to be unduly concerned with these various terminologies, especially because you will be given a better glimpse of this in your mechanics of solids laboratory. Furthermore, I believe you will have another course from materials science in your third year probably. So there you will go into the deep details of all of this. And this highest value, okay, this highest value that you obtain, that is called the ultimate stress. Ultimate stress value, and this is indicative of the strength of the material. So ultimate stress, the value of the ultimate stress, that gives you an estimate of the strength of the material. So when you are within the elastic region, the ratio between the sigma and the epsilon, that gives you the value of the Young's modulus. This you already know, but the strength of the material is something different from the Young's modulus. Okay, so Young's modulus is the ratio of the sigma by epsilon in the elastic region. The strength of the material is the highest value that is obtained in this stress strain curve. Okay, so that is the maximum value of the stress that can be experienced by the particular material. And beyond that, this thing just drops, and then you have this rupture. Yeah, this is sometimes referred to as the strain softening region, but that's not very important. Now, what I really wanted to go into was that there are a few things. This you see is the engineering stress strain diagram. Okay, I'll take 1 minute more. This is the engineering stress strain diagram. Engineering stress, engineering strain. Which means that you must also have some kind of a true stress, true strain diagram. Furthermore, note that all of these things have been drawn considering the tensile test. That means when the bar is being pulled apart. What will happen, suppose if the bar, instead of being pulled apart, it is compressed? What will happen then? So the diagram will be slightly different. Furthermore, what will happen is if instead of engineering stress, engineering strain in compression, you consider true strain, true stress and true strain in compression. That is also another aspect. Furthermore, we have only been talking about low carbon steel. What happens if you take a different kind of ductile material? Another aspect is what happens if you take another kind of brittle material. So these are other considerations which you should know growing up. So what I will do is that you tell me what I should do. Should I record a video on this, a small video on this, and share with you, or because this is not very hard. Okay, I mean, if you give me another 40 minutes or so.
Live session is good, I guess.
Live session is good, but the thing is that from next week, no, I mean, we are losing these 2 classes. Otherwise, I would have definitely finished this comfortably. But from the next week, if we don't start torsion, then we'll be in deep trouble. The real start of mechanics of solids is with torsion. I actually have to start that.
All right, so then you can give the recording only.
Better, yeah, because this is mostly like a recap, and it will be taught in your mechanics of solids lab also. Okay, so just for this little part, maybe if I just give a small video, it will be good for everyone. Okay, like these kind of things, it will be good for short question answer kind of things. Okay, and I can also share some textbook material with you, like some parts of some pages of the textbooks that I can share with you, which you must study. All right, so on that note, I will not take any more of your next class time. So please leave, all of you. Thank you very much for your patience, and we will meet on August 23rd, that is next Monday. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.